Hi guys, I want to show you this afternoon how to make pizza dough. I have the ingredients out here for you. Olive oil, sea salt, regular salt would work just fine, and yeast. I buy a tub of yeast because I bake a lot, but if you're not in the habit of baking regularly, you can buy single serving, single quantity packets that are just as good. All-purpose flour and sugar. So we're going to get started with the yeast. The yeast, if you're using a packet, you use just one packet. If you're using it from a tub, a packet is the equivalent of 2 1/4 teaspoons. So 1, 2, and 1/4. I'm sprinkling this on top of 2 cups of warm water. So it's about room temperature, a little bit warmer than room temperature. I put that in here before we started. And then just 1 teaspoon of sugar. Helps the yeast to rise a little bit better. Okay, now we don't need any more sugar, so I'm going to put this back here. We don't need any more yeast, so I'm going to put this back here. And while this is getting activated, we're going to start with the flour. This part is a little bit flexible. I usually start with about 2 cups of flour into my big bowl. If you are a person who likes to cook with whole grains, bake with whole grains, people recommend just 1 or 2 cups of whole grain and then the rest white, so that your dough will be light. But that's of course personal preference. And 1 teaspoon of salt. I like sea salt, but if you have table salt in your house right now and that's what you want to use, that's just fine too. I like to measure over here in case I make a mistake. It won't go into my other ingredients. And then mix these together so that they're kind of well incorporated. All right, now we don't need any of this anymore, so I'm going to put it over here. We're going to make a well in the middle. If you were playing in the sandbox, this would be like digging a hole, like a little mini swimming pool in the middle there. And we're going to put 1/3 cup of olive oil. If you don't have olive oil, another oil will work just fine. Canola oil or blended oils work well. We keep olive oil in my house all the time, but if you don't, another oil will work just as well. And put that in the middle. Now the olive oil we're going to need again in the flour, so I'm keeping that with me. Okay, now the instructions say about 5 minutes for the yeast, but you can see that this is successful. If the yeast is not moving around and active, then you probably want to have a do-over, because check the expiration date on the yeast and make sure that you have active yeast, because this is what will make the dough rise. It smells good. It should smell funny too. So when that's happening, usually about 5 minutes, you're going to add the water and the yeast and the sugar to salt, flour, and olive oil. This is, of course, not all the flour you're going to use. It's just the beginning. And stir. This is why we have a big bowl, because it's easy to slosh over. Now, what I do now is I just keep adding flour until it gets hard to stir. And when it's hard to stir, then it's time to start kneading, which is fun. That's when you get to get your hands dirty. When I'm doing this, or when my kids were little and we did it together, they like to stir at the beginning, and then they'd usually ask for help at the end, because it gets hard to stir when you add a lot of flour. It gets kind of, the dough resists the rubber scraper. It's hard to stir. Okay, so when it starts to look like this, you see that? that means that it's time to start using your hands to knead the dough. So I'm going to put a little bit more flour in and put some on the countertop here. Get this other stuff out of the way. And then, this is my favorite part, the kneading. Okay. All the ingredients in there. Now, if you have 2 kids in your family, or 2 people working, whatever their age, after you get enough flour incorporated so that it's not super sticky, you can break this dough in half, and each person can have some to knead so that everybody's busy. When I was doing this more often with younger kids, we usually had the same thing where the kids would start first and go as long as they could. About 8 to 10 minutes is how long you want to knead the dough, guys. So it takes a long time and a lot of muscles in your arms. If your child is not yet countertop length, you want to get out a stool. Maybe you have one in your bathroom or in your garage, because kneading is a lot easier if you can use your whole body weight to push down. You need more muscle than just your arms. All right. The goal is for the dough to be a round, smooth ball, and for all of the flour to be incorporated. So you don't want any globs of flour, and you don't want it to be sticking to your hands anymore. If it is sticking to your hands, what you want to do is put some flour in them. Guys, I didn't show you before the video because we didn't want it to be too long, but you already know that before you bake, especially with this recipe, since you're putting your hands in the dough, you would want to wash your hands with soap, singing as you wash, and then you want to rinse very, very carefully, because you certainly don't want your dough to taste like soap. That is yucky. So after you've washed thoroughly, rinsed thoroughly, and then you're good to go. And I wouldn't recommend, this is not like cookie dough. Sometimes if you're a baking family, you take a little bite before you cook, and cookie dough is yummy, but this would not be delicious. It's delicious when it's cooked, but it doesn't have enough sugar in it to be good before it's cooked. Okay, this is starting to look like what you would want it to. It's okay to, if you're enjoying yourself, to knead it a little bit longer than you absolutely have to. But you don't want to put way more flour than you need, because then your dough will be hard when you bite it, and it won't be very tasty. So when it starts to be kind of satiny smooth like this, and all of the flour is part of the dough, it's time to quit. Don't worry though, the fun is not over. So the last step is to take another big bowl. This one's just like the one I started with. I have 2, lucky me. And put a little bit, about a tablespoon, but it doesn't matter too much, in the bottom. And then swish it around. What you're doing is getting some moisture on your dough so that it doesn't get a dry crust on it while it's rising. And then, you flip it over so that the oily side is on top. And then you could cover it with plastic wrap if you have that in your home. I like this that I got from Pampered Chef, my cousin, the Pampered Chef. Oh, I have the wrong lid. Let's try this one. There you go. I like this one because, of course, it's reusable and it has a little vent hole. So since we bake so much, we have this. You can also use a kitchen towel, just an old kitchen towel, and get it with warm water and damp and cover it over so that none of the sides of your bowl are showing. This is going to sit like this for an hour and a half, about. If you keep your house below 65 degrees, you might want to heat up your oven just a little bit so it's more like 80 or a little 90 degrees. Turn the oven off and then put this in. Or if you have a sunny spot in your house, you can just put the dough in the sunny spot so that it's warm. It'll rise better if it has a little bit of warmth. We're going to stop now, and this would be a good time, guys. If you are a reader, to go read a book, or a puzzle maker, make a puzzle, or an artist, you could go do some artwork, and then ask Mom or Dad to tell you when it's an hour and a half from now, and we'll check the dough, and then when we get back together, I'll show you how to roll it out and make your pizza. All right, let's check out our dough. Okay, good. That was a wonderful rise, right? It's all the way to the top of the bowl. You can see the little air bubbles in there. So, more fun. Here we go. Punch it down so it deflates. Scoop it all together. Now, choices that you can make. If you would like to divide this in half and make 2 thin crust pizzas, that would be just fine. It will work. It's enough dough for that. In my family, we like a thick crust pizza. Well, we like both, but today I'm going to make a thick crust pizza. And I'm using a round stone plate pie, but you could use a cookie sheet, you could use a square sheet, it matters not at all. And you should, at this point in time, use whatever you have handy. I like to put cornmeal on to keep it from sticking. If you don't keep cornmeal, you could use olive oil or whatever the oil of choice is in your family, but put something on the tray or the stoneware that you're using, so that, because the dough will stick and then you'll have a hard time getting it off the pan when you're done cooking. So there's that. I think that's about 2 tablespoons approximately. Then I put just a little sprinkling, not a ton, a little sprinkling of flour on the surface you intend to roll on, and spread it out. This is so that when you roll out your dough, it doesn't stick to the counter. It can stick a little bit, but you don't want there to be a hole when you pull it off to put it on the pan. Most of this you can do with your hands. So if you don't have a rolling pin, your hands will work pretty well. There's some really hotshot good pizza bakers who can pick this dough up and spin it. I can pick it up and pull it, but I'm not really that adept to swing it. So I use my rolling pin. Get it in the shape that you want it to be. So if you were going to make a rectangle, you'd get the rectangle started and then use your rolling pin to roll it. Now you can see already that this is going to be a pretty thick crust. I haven't even let it rise yet, and it's already about a ½ inch thick. Some people prefer it thinner. Another thing that you can do if you want it to be a deep dish pizza is you can roll the middle thin and pull it up on the sides so that you have a lot of crust on the edge to hold your ingredients in. Sometimes people like that. Your choice. All right, now you're going to lift it. You might need an adult to do this, or do it 2 people at a time, to your pan. And it won't go too easily because it's not solid, it's wiggly, like Play-Doh. Get it onto the stone, and there you go. Now, the next step is to preheat your oven to about 400 degrees, so hot, a hot oven. We're going to let this rest for just a few minutes while the oven preheats, and then we'll put the adult in your family, this is not a child's job, put this into the oven to cook for about 10 minutes until it's browned and risen a little bit, so that when you take it out, the bread part of your pizza is just almost done, and then all that remains is for you to put your pizza toppings on top. So I'm going to preheat the oven, we'll cook this, and then we'll put the pizza together. Okay, oven is preheated. Adult job, this is an adult job. Kids would want to be over there. Open the oven first because you need both your hands available, and you don't want the opening the oven to be while juggling a pizza crust. It doesn't go very well. So here we go. Top shelf, you notice? Okay, so about 10 minutes. We're going to let it cook, and when we take it out, adult, it will be ready to put the pizza toppings on. All right, let's see how our crust is looking. Okay. Good enough, good enough. We just want it to be off to a good start in cooking. Probably this is an adult job. Oven work, always an adult job. All right, now, what remains, that's a beautiful crust, I think. What remains is for you to put the toppings that your family enjoys on your pizza, and I'm not gonna get too much into it because it feels a little too controlling to me. Cheese is always popular, so I keep this in my fridge, and the easiest way to put sauce on is to buy one of, this has got garlic in it, but you can also get it with basil and or oregano in it. Or you can just start with a plain tomato sauce and spice it yourself if that's how you like to do it. Another idea is pesto. Pesto pizza is yummy if you like to make pesto or buy pesto. So I'm going to just make tomato sauce and cheese today. You make the pizza that you love. Pizza! All done. Hope you enjoy. The great thing about pizza is it's a super simple, super forgiving recipe, so there's a bajillion different ways to do it right. If you would prefer to use a different recipe, the sequence of kneading and cooking will be just the same. And that's all. Enjoy.